Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the consideration of these figures in footnote number 6. These figures are very symbolic in a certain sense, although Madame Blavatsky does insist on their accuracy. And, this is just kind of a thought experiment in order to gain a sense of proportion regarding time and universal duration, which in fact, from the highest perspective, or may not exist at all. So, but in the universe of Mahamaya, that's what the universe really is, one of an endless series, beginningless endless series of Mahamayas, we have to take interval into consideration, even though all separate registrations may in fact be superimposed and may in fact be the same thing. In other words, there being finally none of the divisions that we talk about. But when we're in a universe, as it seems we have forever been, cyclically, we have to take these intervals into consideration and deal with some of the quasi-poetic symbolic writings of the ancient sages. And then as time passes and our computing power gets stronger, larger, more effective, we'll be able to, and as our knowledge of the inner worlds and the durations of cycles in the inner worlds become something to consider, we'll be able to maybe prove whether there is something of value in these huge periods of time. And of course, what's really important is the sense of where these great periods of time place the human being. So many people seem to think that when they die, they will be wiped out forever, and they were simply a material occurrence in a limited universe. And I think we will, before long, prove that that is not the case. Just want to welcome you here a little bit, and so Michael is standing guard, Michael Stacy, and appreciation for all you're doing there. And welcome to Anne Veronica and Anna and Anne Parker and Anthony. Aurea, welcome. Catherine, Chris, Christine, Ishtar, Joe, who is, part of our broadcasting team, doing a lot of work, as Michael is, to get these things to you. Joan, Juhi, Karen, Kim, Leslie, Martine, Risto, Sriram, Vicky, and Zenaidi, so far, and Nesa, so far. Welcome to you all, and we'll certainly derive something from our work in Cosmic Fire. Now, this sixth footnote is a real showstopper. You know, it gives figures that are stupendous when we consider how we usually think of a year or a decade or even a century. We have such short spans of time in our mind. Maybe we will consider a cycle of 2,500 years for an equinoctial age, maybe roughly 25,000 years for a great Platonic year, maybe 250,000 years for a revolution of our 7 solar systems and probably other systems around the Pleiades. At least it has been proposed that the actual revolution may be factual, and others suggest that it is some kind of cycle that may not be astronomically or geometrically confirmed. And, you know, we consider the 18.5 million years since individualization. Well, let me call it the coming of the Lords of the Flame took place. And by the way, when we have our Sirius activities, the Sirius Leo Festival will coming up now, and you should, you know, have been receiving notification of the times and dates. We will be considering what the Lords of the Flame are, and then, you know, maybe we consider the 21 million years, you know, 6 zeros, since the solar angels shot forth from the Sagittarian bow and lodged themselves in the budding mind and brain of animal man. Beyond that kind of figure, well, maybe we'll go a few billion years back to the moon chain, and maybe we will consider the previous solar system. But as large as those figures are that we normally deal with in occultism, the kinds of figures that are presented to us through the Puranas and other Indian writings, which probably came in the last analysis from Atlantis, are ever so much larger. Now, we have gone through, Michael had that up, we have gone through the usual figures that are given about yugas and mahayugas, and we've gone through the reign of Manus in 71 mahayugas. We've gone through intervals between these yugas. And, you know, when I say gone through, we've made note of them. And we've come up with a figure called 1 day of Brahma, which is 4,320,000,000 years, according to the kinds of figures that Madame Blavatsky gave. I got a little bit into a musical analogy here as well. And then if we want the day and night of Brahma, 1 day and night, we have 8 billion. You know, I'm using the names as they would appear in American terminology. Maybe some people call it milliard. 8,640,000,000 years. And then 1 year of Brahma, 3,110,400,000,000 years. Obviously, these are somewhat symbolical figures. The true durations cannot be given to us. And finally, the Mahakalpa, or the age actually of one solar system, both interior and exterior, far, far greater than what is now even estimated to be the age of a universe. But then that simply takes material states into consideration. So this is an occult century, and it's 311 trillion 40 billion years. And, you know, on the basis of that, we can make other kinds of calculations that are quite interesting. And Blavatsky has said that these figures are not fanciful, but are founded upon astronomical facts, has been demonstrated by, and then, you know, the scientists of her era, Mr. Davis, in an essay in the Asiatic Researches, and this receives further corroboration from the geological investigations and calculations made by Dr. Hunt, etc., and Professor Huxley. Okay, now we kind of came to this point, and really, you know, it's not that we have to memorize these figures. It's probably good to know that the yugas are related to each other in the proportion of 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. And that has certain, you know, musical implications for a musical key to the secret doctrine. You know, the 1, 2, 3, 4, it's a fourfold figure, and yet it has 10 points in it. So it's probably good to know that the Mahayugas is arranged in that form. And if it's possible, it's probably good to memorize the figure 311 trillion 40 billion years as the given age of the solar system derived from these Brahmanical from the Brahmanical calendars that have been researched accordingly. Now maybe comes a kind of a symbolic statement, not meant to be taken entirely literally, but it gives at least a sense of the scope. Now, whenever we're dealing with scope, you know, how long is long? What is eternal duration? And what is bounded duration of a great number of Earth years? As stated last time, we can measure all this in our Earth years. It's very relative, but beings on different planets, the man-type being or the intelligences on different planets might measure according to their own planetary cycles, and depending upon the kind of source planet or solar system or cosmic system in which they live, they would measure accordingly. We have no idea what those cycles are. We don't even know what our own planetary cycles are, and we will not know until we are masters of the wisdom. When we have what is called, at least as far as our planet is concerned, we have all knowledge. So it says here that great as the period of the Mahakalpa seems to be, and you know, if we don't just gloss over the duration of a Mahakalpa, it is an astonishing figure. I mean, who can imagine 311 trillion Earth years? It's, you know, it's out of scale entirely to what science says of the duration even of our entire universe. So great as the period of the Mahakalpa seems to be, we are assured, and here comes this kind of symbolic writing, that thousands and thousands of millions of such Mahakalpas have passed, and as many more are yet to come. The hint here is, that our universe is at its middle point. Just as our planet is at its middle point, given on page 384, we'll take a look at that, of Cosmic Fire. And just as our solar system is at its middle point in the 311 trillion. So thousands and thousands of millions, we'll kind of, take those rough symbolic figures and we'll kind of just look at what the scope might be. The overwhelming purpose of all of this is to induce in us the proper sense of humility, which is considered to be humility, according to the Tibetan, an adjusted sense of right proportion. And an adjusted sense of right proportion. That is what humility is. So when you're dealing with stupendous figures, the little life of man at this present time is just a tiny blip on the screen of a universal duration. And so all of this is coming from something called the Brahma Vaivarta and the Bhavishire Puranas. I don't know the pronunciation there, and the Linga Purana. And it quotes chapter and verse. And this in plain language means that time past is infinite and time to come is equally infinite. Well, in terms of how a human being measures time and the impression regarding time, this may be so. The question is, are we talking about our particular universe, or are we talking about another in an endless cycle of universes? So we don't know, but I tend to think that we're, the idea of cyclic universes occurring in perpetuity must have been with some of these writers, because the whole concept of the great breath is part of the ancient esoteric teaching. And the great breath had no beginning, and it has no end, if we consider it to be linear. Now, we can also consider it to be the foremost great illusion in time. If we do not have division, then the great breath does not really exist. It is a great super universal Maya. But we don't know that, okay? So anyway, for all practical purposes, we're here forever. We've never not been. We never will not be. And we're always in the middle, if a strange language can be used, of infinite time. Beginningless, we always stand at the middle of beginningless duration and endless duration. And our point is always preceded by an infinitude of cycles and to be succeeded by an infinitude of cycles. So anyway, the ancient writers thought that, this was reasonable. And if we begin to calculate in a strange way, using this sequential treatment, thousands and thousands, that's, now, this is just a game here, thousands times 1,000 of how does it say? Thousands and thousands of millions. And I'm just sticking to 1 million. We don't even know we have the range all the way up to 100 million we could put. And then everything, our figure would be then 100 times as great. So if I just use 1 million, it's 1,000 times 1,000 times 1 million. And I think what I'm going to do here, I could use up to 999 million. If I wanted to be a little bizarre here, I could do that. But I'm just sticking with 1 million, so that equals 1 trillion. And as said, 1,000 times 1,000 times 1 million, 1 trillion. And the footnote suggests many, many more. Thus, when considering the number of years which have elapsed so far in our cosmos, in our total cosmos, if we deal with these symbolic figures in almost a naive manner, we are dealing with, at the very, very least, a trillion occult centuries. And so if you add the 4 zeros onto the occult centuries, what you get is a figure called 311 octillion, 40 septillion years. And what you can see there is 311, then followed by 40 with 7 groups of zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the number of Earth years which would yet remain in the duration of our present universe, of which there was always an infinitude. We've forever had an infinitude of sequential universes. Is at least equal to this, and I say fire, I should have said figure, sorry. The figure, of course, is much too small because 1 trillion is ridiculously less than thousands and thousands of millions. So we could multiply that entire figure by even 999 million, and it would be 999 million times greater if we went to the extreme. And then we would, it's much too small because we have still as many more to come. And even if we stick to the lowest possible figure, we get 622 octillion, 80 septillion years to measure the duration of a universe, according to this poetical symbolic language, if we count both outward and inward development. But other figures that I've worked with, and they are, okay, they are not fanciful, but they are at least symbolic or poetic, and they're not exact, but it produces a suggested duration of some 80 zeros behind some initial number. And I didn't have time to really get into the recalculation of that, but the idea is similar. We have the ancient occult suggestion that given the interior development of a solar system, a much greater number of years is involved than the maybe 15 billion years which define a universe in scientific terms now. And then when you start to take the ancient writings and talk about time past, even if it had a beginning, and time to the future, even if it has an end, each universal instance will have a tremendous number of Earth years to deal with, and some of those figures are here, and even larger figures are here. We could possibly go over. So what I would like us to do just for a second, a second, well, I'm going to read something that is about a second of time, and you make up your own mind, okay? It's also in Cosmic Fire. But just, just think of the kinds of spans that we are talking about here. There's really almost no way our mind can embrace it, we're just, in our present form, tiny little subatomic particles in comparison with man. And just think that you are in this system of eternal duration. Even if we're just talking about one universe, which according to the doctrine of the Great Breath, we cannot really talk of one universe. The span concerning it on the subjective levels is immense. Remember how many planes there are. When DK gives a picture of a plane, let's see if I can show that to us. I'm not going to be too successful. Okay, that's not successful. I would like to, I have here Tuya's figure drawings, colorations of DK's renderings, or at least how he advised people to do that. And here, I should have all had this ready. I'm trying to, okay, open this. And, I guess just the way this little conversation is overloaded with years, my computer is overloaded with images at the moment. And I cannot, yeah, there it is. Okay, good. Let's see if I can do this. All right. So now you should see.
Just change your screen
Michael,
share.
No, I'm afraid I have a pretty terminal case here of overload. So what figure do you see, or what do you see on the screen?
It's still the document that you were showing.
Zoom is not responding. Okay, so
you've got artifacts.
Okay, am I back? Do you see anything?
Yes, there's evolution of a solar logos.
You should see something. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, and now you should see this big drawing.
You have up the chart, evolution of a solar logos. You're good.
Okay, it's like somebody up there is trying to tell me I've gone too far, At least my program was shutting down right in front of my eyes. Even this huge figure, which basically, this map, which takes into consideration not only the evolution of our solar logos, but of solar logoi, which are constellational and super constellational logoi, and it's just the very beginning of the 10 dimensions of cosmos. So we're we're given a picture of the universe which interiorly is so big, so time-consuming, that all we can do is put our own normal problems and difficulties into proportion. That would be the ideal thing to do. But of course, usually when we're having problems, we don't think of this huge figure that has been spelled out in the writings of the East. And if you put DK's information in Cosmic Fire together with the writings of the East, you can actually begin to get figures, octillion, nonillion, vigintillion. You start to get figures with like 60 zeros after them and 80 zeros, and it just goes on and on. And those figures are maybe appearing before our eyes and into the consideration of our mind for the first time. So what do we do with that? Say, well, it's just too much? That's what my program seems to have said. It's just too much. On the other hand, we talk glibly about the word infinity. People use it, oh, an infinite number of this and an infinite number of that. And our concept of infinity is very superficial, because it is always infinitely greater than any specific number, no matter how great that specific number may be. So what's it supposed to do for the disciple? Maybe give a sense of endlessness in the great quest that we are on. That's what I would say it should do. A beginningless, endless quest. And a beginningless, endless participation cyclically in the Mahamaya. And it gives just a tiny glimpse of other words that are thrown around glibly: eternal duration. It's so easy to say eternal duration, but think for a moment, what that might really mean. And remember, it's not just eternal duration as measured from a definite point. It is eternal duration which has always been and never had a beginning, nor will it have an end. And so it puts into question what are beginning and end anyway. And our whole language can begin to fall apart since it's based on concretion. Well, it doesn't hurt to be able to spend a little time thinking about these stupendous calculations, even though there's really nothing we can do about them except to have a sense of awe regarding the universe and the endless sequence of universes, and that which lies beyond the universe altogether. So here then are just a few figures that I thought to run by you, so you could, get a sense of how, if we apply just a little simple math, what kind of durations we could come up with. Here on page 384 of Cosmic Fire, coming back down to Earth, literally, it's talking about our planetary logos. It says, he is in physical incarnation. I suppose there are logoi who are not, and I suppose that not every logos is always in physical incarnation. Now, these are important points. He is midway through his career upon the cosmic path of initiation. And, when did that really begin? That's an important point to consider because it didn't begin at the beginning. So when did this begin? Think about yourself as a human being. If you were midway on your own individual path of initiation, you wouldn't be considering all the millions of years that elapsed before you could begin to think about initiation. You know, just millions and millions of years, maybe you've been around for 21 million years approximately, and maybe only, let's say, 5,000 years, and this is an exaggeration probably, have been given to the path of initiation. So we're not even counting your livingness before the point of initiation. Anyway, he's midway through his career, and consequently is to take the fourth initiation in this chain. Now, this hints at 7 initiations, doesn't it? Hints at 7 initiations, because on our 4th chain and our 4th globe, etc., 4 is the central point in a 7-fold span. And he even does tell us that 7 is the figure. And, you know, not to get into too much detail, he's supposed to take the 4th initiation in this chain. Well, we know what our chain is. It's the Earth chain. But the question is, what kind of round are we talking about? Is it a chain round, or is it a big scheme round? That's just to be held in the back of your mind. Well, now here comes something practical. Well may this globe, therefore, be considered the globe of sorrow and of pain. For through it, our planetary logos is undergoing what the mystic calls the crucifixion. The cells in his body, those cells through which he feels and senses and experiences, are in this world period, and by world period we might consider a chain round, they are rent, torn by pain and suffering. For his is the consciousness at the center of the body, and theirs is the capacity to suffer. And that word theirs refers to such beings as ourselves. Theirs is the capacity to suffer, so that by means of them, he may learn the meaning of systemic dispassion, because after all, he's only an initiate of the first cosmic degree, even though he is in another system of initiation, taking a lesser 4th initiation. So our planetary logos has a personality problem, basically, and DK says as much later, and has not learned dispassion with respect to affairs that are occurring within the solar system. In this case, as below, so above. And it's startling, actually, that there's such a parallelism there between the planetary logos and our own system of advancement. So he's an initiate of the first cosmic degree, not yet of the 2nd cosmic degree, and he's learning dispassion just the way we do in that period between the 1st and 2nd individual initiation. So by means of all these cells in his body, of which we can consider ourselves, you know, to number, he may learn the meaning of systemic dispassion and be dissociated from all forms and material substance, and upon the cross of matter, eventually find liberation and the freedom of the spirit. So if you really think about it, of course, our solar, our planetary God is on what's the equivalent of the fixed cross, cosmically considered, but he just left the cross of matter, the mutable cross, the common cross. He just left that particular condition of bondage not so long ago. So he has plenty to learn. Now, what I want to point out here is that we've read about him, this great planetary logos, not yet a sacred planet. The judgment day has not yet occurred. The fifth subsidiary initiation has not yet occurred, as a result of which sacredness of the planet can develop. Of course, there's the sacredness of globes, the sacredness of chains, and the sacredness of the entire planet. And that we don't have the cycles on that. It's just that we know that those three kinds of sacredness must be achieved by our planetary logos. Now, everything we've just said, and here's the important point, the same equally can be predicated of a solar logos. You know, that he's midway, that he's taking a fourth subsidiary initiation, that the cells in his vehicle can suffer, and that he too is learning systemic dispassion, because we live in the system of a non-sacred planetary logos. Sirius is sacred. Our logos is not yet sacred. We live in such a system, just the way we, for a solar logos, just the way we live on a non-sacred planet. So developments on ahead are important. Our solar logos is reaching towards the cosmic mental plane, we are told, or is reaching towards the third initiation cosmically considered, which is a kind of transfiguration, kind of a glorification. He's not there yet. And as a result, his sacredness is in question, not compared to us, of course. He's plenty sacred when compared to us. And as a result, he too is suffering from a lack of dispassion in this very astrally polarized solar system. So, you know, we're in the middle of a span then, apparently, because it just says we're in the middle of a planetary logoic span, and now we're in the middle of a solar logoic span. So we're in the middle of a period of Earth years somewhere around 155 trillion Earth years. We're in the middle of that huge span, which is said to be the duration of a solar logoic manifestation. And we don't really know whether the earlier solar systems, this is really the fifth, we don't really know how long they lasted. We know that this one lasts what's called an occult century, and it's this long. You know, it's always ideal to live to be 100, you know. The old saying, if I only live to be 100, okay. Well, we seem to be applying that to these greater beings. So the conclusion to be drawn here is that, yes, time, even within our solar system, is like to us loosely, virtually infinite. It's a finite universe, it's a finite solar system, but it just seems so very, very long once you start to consider the higher planes, a picture of which I showed just a little bit ago, in which a solar logos is a very minor being. It's a chakra within a chakra within a chakra within a chakra. That is what our solar logos really is. And if I can illustrate that, our solar logos is here. It's a chakra within this chakra. And that's a one about whom naught may be said. And this chakra is a chakra within one of these chakras, which I call sub-parabrahmic chakras or entities. And each one of these chakras is a chakra within a cosmic parabrahm, of which you would know, of course, there's going to be 7 of these, but then what kind of map do we want to draw? You know, if we looked at that system, that map in the Theosophists called Parabrahm, it's 7 into 1, 7 into 1, 7 into 1, 7 into 1. Your map would have to be huge laterally in order to be able to draw all of that, but at least it's suggested. So I'll repeat that, well, when it comes to planetary logoi, they are chakras within a solar logoic chakra, within a one about whom not may be said chakra, within a sub-parabrahmic chakra, within a parabrahmic chakra. So there's 5 steps right there. Chakras within chakras, wheels within wheels. You know, a huge system. What does it mean to us as microscopic man? Now, you know, we're just little disciples here, and we're trying to at least help bring forward a divine plan which has to do with our planetary logos, and not so much these super cosmic issues. But, you know, you can expand your mind, you can get into the abstract considerations, and it will help to feed the development of your triadal mind, which is based on the monastic permanent atom. It's based on that part of the spiritual triad which you can most easily enter. It's harder to enter Buddhi. It's still harder to enter spiritual will. Now, I have one more of these ancient writings that I'd like to be able to, well, you know, I promise you I'm not gonna try to calculate all this. We could, in a symbolic way, kind of calculate this duration. We could do that. And it wouldn't give us any accurate figure at all, but it would give us a figure of general scope. It would give us that much. So here is this thing from the old commentary. It's on page 1084 of Cosmic Fire. You know, even though we are going semi-sequentially through this book, and I only half joke when I say we'll be ready by 2050, we have to also take little side trips to other parts of the book and other parts of the teaching to amplify what we are discussing. Okay, so get a hold of this and then just start thinking about the dimensions of cosmos. The one wheel turns, and you kind of wonder, you know, is that a galaxy or is that the entire universe? The universal wheel. Anyway, the one wheel turns. One turn alone is made during a particular universal manifestation, let us say. One turn alone is made, and every sphere and suns of all degrees follow its course. Now, obviously, this is a kind of turning that our science cannot yet follow. The night of time is lost in it. And here comes the measurement. And kalpas measure less than seconds in the little day of man. 10 million kalpas pass, and twice 10 million Brahmic cycles, each one of which is 311 trillion 40 billion years long, and yet 1 hour of cosmic time is not completed. Well, you could certainly, dwell on that one. And you could come up with some figures, which I tried to do here. I haven't calculated it all out, but there's 60 seconds in an hour, 24 hours. So there are the seconds in the tiny day of man. And I had this figure 1440. I'm beginning to wonder where I got it, but anyway, it does, yeah, that's the 60 times 24. Times twice 10 million is 20 trillion Brahmic cycles, times 311 trillion 40 billion years in a Brahmic cycle. And these would be years in an hour of cosmic time, or less than an hour. How many hours are there of cosmic time? Well, perhaps we would ask how many hours are there in 100 years, which is 24 hours times 360 days, which is the figure they use for a year, times 100, multiplied by the figure derived immediately above. So if I was to analyze in terms of numbers, even though they are symbolic, and semi-poetic, but HPB insists that they're accurate, we would have a figure that would give us, that we could expand into a registration of cosmic time. We could do that. Now I'm going to go on. I'm not going to calculate that out. Maybe sometime I will, just for fun, to see how many zeros we're going to have here. But I'm just going to go on with the old commentary registration. Within the wheel, forming that wheel, are all the lesser wheels from the first to the 10th dimension, the 10-dimensional cosmos. These in their cycle turn, hold in their, is a cyclic turn, hold in their spheres of force other and lesser wheels. It's all chakras within chakras within chakras, yet many suns, which is the symbolic term, by the way, not just a solar logos, but a sun can be a whole constellation, can be a whole super constellation, etc. Yet many suns compose the cosmic one. Wheels within wheels, spheres within spheres, each pursues his course and attracts and rejects his brother, and yet cannot escape from the encircling arms of the mother, the all-container here. When the wheels of the fourth dimension, of which our sun is one, interesting hint about the yellow and the monadic ray, of which ours is one, and all that is of lesser force and higher number, such as the 8th and 9th degrees, turn upon themselves, devour each other, and turn and rend their mother, then will the cosmic wheel be ready for a faster revolution. So the eternal parent, wrapped in her ever invisible robes, has slumbered once again for 7 eternities. You know, we can tie this right in with the stanzas of Dzyan. And just so you know, the stanzas of Dzyan given in this book, Cosmic Fire, are not the same stanzas as those given in the Secret Doctrine. So that's all I'm going to work on when it comes to these huge numbers. You know, when you end with an old commentary statement like this magnificent statement, you get such an idea of the scope of things that it begins to induce the kind of humility that is necessary to see the truth and not just be so narrow about our assessment of truth that we are always in a land of error. I've read this old commentary thing over and over again. I've worked with it, and there are places when I question what are the dimensions of cosmos. Everything really has 10 dimensions. It's a kind of a Kabbalistic approach. It's 3 above 7. And our particular solar, non-sacred solar logos is at the 4th dimension. Now, maybe there are 10 dimensions of solar logoi, and maybe when it comes to different kinds of beings, of which the whole hierarchy of solar logoi are one type of being, there are 10 dimensions of all those different kinds of beings. So it's a big stretch to think in these terms, and we're never going to do so with accuracy, but it will, in a way, quiet us down when we are concerned with the immediate human problems. Of course, those problems are to be solved, but it will put things in perspective. And meditating with that kind of perspective can cause a significant change in consciousness. So I think that's all I'm going to deal with today. About an hour has passed. There are a few other statements from the Bhagavad Gita, etc., and then we get back to this ray of intelligent activity and deal with the latent and radiatory fires of the solar system, which is where we started. But, you know, that footnote just sits there like a great challenge, and something about the numbering should at least be understood. It enriches the life, our life, to understand a little something about that numbering, and it's one step toward all knowledge, in which, at least all planetary knowledge, in which the knowledge of cycles plays a major role. So what I'm going to do, you know, we don't ever take a whole lot of pages here, but I'm going to copy this and hope to stay on target. I bet we haven't moved off the footnote, so we're probably in the same page, you know, with a few little adventures into other parts of the book. So this is the end of 2420. a treatise on cosmic fire. And it is the 31st of July, and we're into Leo now, and the great Leo festival is coming up. I am that I am, and we'll, let's see here, 31 and it's 7. The next time together is 25 and 21. I did 4 of these myself, without discussion. So that's why there's a discrepancy of 4. And this will be the 7th of August. And by that time, the Leo Sirius activity will be completed. And it will be in the AM, which makes it harder, I know, on some of you. And I think, are we still on the same page, Michael? Yeah, 39. We're still on page 39.
Still on the same page. It's marvelous.
It's, like, what did they say? The old sages, dig your well deep rather than a lot of little superficial wells. You'll never reach water. Dig at least one well very deeply, and you'll reach what you need to reach, the water. Okay. Now, so basically, the thoughts that occur to you are what is important at this point. These are the important considerations and questions you may have in relation to this kind of material. And also, as I always say, like anything in occultism that you want to bring up, because everything leads to everything else. I may not know the path from thing A to thing B, but I have the faith that every piece of information leads to any other piece of information. A relationship can be found. So does a total silence prevail, or is there anybody that would like to say or ask anything?
They are working on putting their concepts, their thoughts together. Perhaps we need to keep in mind that time is relative. When we are actively engaged in some form of activity, whatever that activity may be, relative time passes by instantaneously. When we are not actively engaged, it drags on and on.
Yeah, it's the psychological apprehension of units of time which otherwise would seem to be equal, but due to the psychological dynamics are not perceived as equal. Now, probably time is expandable. And a lot of Einstein's work basically showed the expansion and compression of time. Those experiments, how someone is traveling in space and comes back younger than those who have been left behind and so forth. There's also the whole question that if there are no real dimensions, in other words, let's just say that dimensionality is a part of Mahamaya. By Mahamaya, I mean any universe and what goes on within it. So if dimensionality is not real, then time and space, which are based upon dimension, are not real either. Now we have to forever act as if they are real, because that's the game we play, as it were. We're not going to if I can say, we're not going to improve on the absolute. Absoluteness is ultimate and non-improvable. But in any limited system of articulated aspects, like emanations or things or perceptions, we can improve by establishing an archetypal realm below, even as it is above. In other words, our game, in this case, is to think of the new design and to reproduce that design sort of with one hand behind our back, that old saying that God is not God, who cannot create the stone he cannot lift. And when I say he, it shouldn't be he, it should be, God. I mean, male, female, plus, minus, it's simply the creative deity. So there are so many mysteries here. Now, part of what Tui and I are going to do, helped by the 2025 initiative group, because we're kind of teaming up on some of these things, is to talk about the emergence of the mysteries, the recognition of the mysteries, what kinds of mysteries there are, and why, what do we mean when we use the word mystery altogether. It's pretty close to the word mystic, but it has a legitimacy which the strictly mystical approach is not containing. In other words, in order to approach the mysteries and get something out of them and succeed in working through them, you have to be an occultist. And we oftentimes contrast the mystic with the occultist. We contrast Neptune with Uranus, and both are completely necessary. But to really fathom what DK talks about when he talks about the restoration of the mysteries, we are talking about occult penetration using occult mind, which is ruled by Uranus and has plenty of Mercury in it as well. There are ways of succeeding entirely on the path of the heart, but it's still incomplete, just the way occult mind by itself, without the love of Neptune, is incomplete and dangerous.
And we have several things written in the chat box from Anne. She writes, Michael, perhaps you can comment how to balance the sense of awe and the sense of futility when considering the magnitude of it all.
Yeah, well, futility is usually measured by a certain sense of identity, which tells us we are the passing personality, and time is short, and we'll never accomplish what we want to in this particular life. And as a matter of fact, we'll never accomplish it, period, the end. But if we change our sense of identity and we realize, I'm going to say some strange things here, that we already are everything that can be accomplished forever, and that in a way nothing can ever be accomplished when we realize that in fact we are absoluteness, it changes the perspective. I mean, in other words, without trying to sound particularly crazy here, we have forever been the ultimate. So what is there to accomplish except in the realm of Mahamaya? which is the limited finite universe. And considering that all that we are trying to accomplish while in that stage of Mahamayavic ignorance, we have already been forever. It's a real turning around of the perception of who we are and what we have to do and what we actually are. I think the simplest way is not to lose sight of one's identity as being. Now, you know, we have that other class, we call it identify as being. If we keep on thinking, okay, I'm a human primate here, and I'm on a little non-sacred planet, and I either do well or I do badly, and this is my real identity, then the sense of futility as measured against myopic time can overtake us. It overtakes me, I'll tell you, from time to time. From time to time, I just know that I will not accomplish what I want to accomplish. But if I change my point of view so that my identity changes, I will, in the last analysis, realize that I and everything else and everyone else actually is ultimateness, which contains within itself a kind of accomplishment beyond which it is impossible to go. In other words, being cannot improve, but within the games that being plays, there can be the successful approximation of the archetype or not. And in the last analysis and in the universe, I happen to be an optimist. I think that a successful approximation of the universal archetype always occurs, no matter how much of illusory time it takes for that to happen. In a way, we all of us have all the time in the world. I can't even use the word world, okay? Time and space, and the masters realize this, time and space have become our playthings, our playthings. That's what DK says. The master considers time and space his playthings, and they are expandable, contractible, and they are all part of our creative process, which is apparently the joy in action of what we are. Joy in action. Now, what we really are never moves, never divides, never has any articulation in it whatsoever. It is ultimate and absolute. Now, maybe that's not much comfort to a lot of people, you know. I've talked to people and they say, well, okay, reincarnation, you talk about it all the time. Not much comfort to me. What me do they mean, you see? So we have to change our perspective on what we are. And then, I'm talking to myself, of course, then that sense of futility will not be with us. If in those darker moments we can remind ourselves successfully of what we really are, then the futility that is tied to finite time will not descend upon us. That's about what I can say about that for the moment.
Joe writes, interesting, as I listen to this commentary on the footnote, it takes on a kind of musicality. It's as if we are listening to a symphony, in my mind at least, very harmonic, quite penetrating, lyric, and classical. I am lifted to a different level of understanding, unattached to any outcome.
That's an interesting statement. And of course, you know, there's a lot of, in addition to the experience you're having, there is a lot of factuality to what you say. The planetary logos is composing a symphony. The solar logos is composing a solar sonata. Who knows what it will be when at the end of cosmic fire, the morning stars sing together. There is that, let's see if I can go to the very end, I know that I'm not there yet, okay. A treatise on cosmic fire. And here is the end of the whole book called Finale. And I'll show it to you. In musical terms, it's page 1200 and whatever, 1283. The morning stars sang in their courses. The great paean of creation echoeth yet, and arouseth vibration. There comes cessation of the song when perfection is achieved, when all are blended into one full chord, the work is done. And you know how often symphonies do end in a very grand harmonic chord. Dissonance in space soundeth yet. Discord ariseth in many systems. When all is resolved into harmony, when all is blended into symphony, the grand chorale will reverberate to the uttermost bounds of the known universe. Then will occur that which is beyond the comprehension of the highest Chohan, the marriage song of the heavenly man. And that's just the beginning, because we're talking about the heavenly man here, you know, and how there's always a synthetic merging of each heavenly man with his polar opposite. Now, I happen to think that Earth and Venus are destined for that marriage, and I believe that Uranus and Neptune are two others destined for the marriage. And so it goes with solar logoi and cosmic logoi until after all of these unions take place. I did quite a bit of work on that, by the way, in the written part of the Cosmic Fire commentaries, speculating about who merges with whom, you know. But when all of that has completed its merging, not only will there be a great consummation of whether it's the symphony or the sonata or whatever musical work we're talking about, but it will be time for the pralaya of the system, which is preceded by the marriage song of whatever entities are uniting. So, yeah, the musical key to the secret doctrine is one method, and Pythagoras was promoting that method in his school in Crotona, in which DK was a very high official. So, you know, that's the line that we're taking here. There are many other ways, of course, many other keys, but this is one of them. The marriage song of not only the heavenly man, but of any two entities on no matter what scale, until we're just left with the final union. And then the ultimate marriage is the breaking of the universal egg and the return of the finite point to its place in absolute infinitude, above and beyond the any universe. So thank you for your thought.
And we have a question from Lori. She writes, in regards to, quote, and yet cannot escape from the encircling arms of the mother, unquote. Does this relate to the Pleiades, representing the mother aspect, and more importantly, Alcyone, the central spiritual son of the Pleiades?
I think it could, but because in a way our entire one about whom naught may be said has, for its center, the Pleiades. And if I could go here, and this little green triangle is what I consider to be the Pleiades. And in it are so many sevenfold systems. The only one that is shown here is the Great Bear, a system of 7 major stars, and it's even on the wrong plane. If you check out page 1162, and then we will have our solar logos and its system and its cosmic logos. So that's 2 out of maybe 7 chakras within that little green triangle up here. And from a certain point of view, the encircling arms of the mother could be considered the eternal parent here, and the Pleiades. But in my view, the implications of the old commentary statement are much bigger than only that. And let's see if I can try to get back there. It'll be down here a bit. Yeah. So let's see, the encircling arms. Okay. Wheels upon wheels, spheres upon spheres. If this is a universal statement regarding the many suns that compose the cosmic one, then we have to go beyond the scope of only one little one about whom naught may be said, which of course is ludicrous to talk about in that way because it's such a stupendous being, but it's one of 49, one of 7, one of 49. And the implications to me of the 10 dimensions here concerns dimensions which are beyond the level of scope where the Pleiades are found. I don't yet think that we have any charts that show galaxies. And yet, with some of them having, what did I read? 6 trillion solar logoi. Of course, it wasn't said that way. It would say 6 trillion stars, or maybe more. But 6 trillion solar logoi, nothing of the scope of that kind of entity is in the charts that we have. And yet I think that this section from the old commentary implies the existence of such super entities. Galaxies as chakras within families of galaxies, which are like cosmic logoi, and families of galaxies as chakras within something else, and on until the 10th dimension is reached. And where does that dimension take us? In every dimension, there are probably 10 dimensions. And where does the final 10-dimensional structure of cosmos take us? I think this particular old commentary section, around which it tells us that the masters know the names of the galaxies, and they have a special symbolic language to reveal the quality of these galaxies. Man does not know this. So I think it's going beyond the mother, is in a way all of time space in this universal logos. The universal logos is both father, mother, in a way, spirit, matter, and we can refer to it as the mother because we have externalization of entities, but it really all came out of spirit matter, which started the emanatory process going through what we would call self-observation, as there's nothing else to see. So my impression is the Pleiades are a mother, and the old commentary is pointing to something still more vast. This is my impression up to this point.
The next comment is from Heike, writing, "In my experience, when we step out of the consciousness of time, we can see all time as just one event and know that we can go down into this part of the event or that part of the event. To go down into a part, a life or another life, or onto another level than this one, etc., means a timeline unfolds for our consciousness."
Okay, it's it's an interesting statement, and we have to even define what the word event actually may mean. An event requires time to occur. The only non-eventfulness is a super universal absoluteness. No events occur within it. An event is a finitude, it's a finite thing, and any finitude can be measured sequentially in units of duration, intervals of duration. So, when we're dealing on this level, we've got to do our best to define every term we use, because it's so dangerous in a way, to use the customary definitions of things. Now, I would honestly say that for what you've just said, I would take your statement apart for an hour, apart away, and study it and see exactly what you are saying, because it sounds quite intricate. What I have tried to do is to negate the reality of time, because without division, there can be no time. And almost anything that we can think of, except maybe for one no thing, has in it the possibility of division. So what I try to do is I try to collapse all intervals of time and all measurements of space. And if I can, and this is the trick, compress them into non-dimensionality, and yet they exist. See, if I can compress time into non-dimensionality, then all times are one time and really no time. If I can compress space into non-measurability, then all spaces are really one space and really no space. One of the interesting definitions of Maya is measurable. I kind of stood back when I looked at that and said, oh my goodness, measurable. Well, what we all are finally looking for in this boundless immutable principle is immeasurability. The minute you have measurability, you have intervals of time, you have spaces of space, you have all the things that division gives you. And when you have an event, you necessarily will have time concomitant with it. I worked with a thing in my Infinity book called in any universe the ultimate particle event. By the choice of the universal logos, nothing could be smaller or shorter in duration than the UPE, ultimate particle event. But still, it is a tangibility. It is a measurability. You know, I'm taking the adjective there, and I'm making it into a noun. It is a measurability, and here's what I'm going to say, and you know, it would require some pondering. Any measurability, whether time or space, or whatever dimension, is ultimately illusory compared with the one and only immeasurability, which is the absoluteness. So we can treat time psychologically, as Michael was suggesting. We can treat it in great expanses or tremendously brief moments in which everything is collapsed into one such moment, something like what you're suggesting here. Or we can try to find a state in which we have eradicated all possibility of time and space when dealing with reality. Not when dealing with the Maya. You've got to have it. You know, this is what we do. The Mahamaya is what we do. But when it comes to the ultimate reality, we do have to eradicate the divisibility, which gives us the possibility of time and space. And, you know, on a lower level, if we can, you know, kind of get rid of the time-space concept, we're striking a blow against the illusion in which we usually live. So I'll tell you what, Heike, Michael will send that to me and let me study it, because it's too much to examine word for word right at this moment. But thank you for your thought on that.
Next comment is from Ishtar. Wonderful thoughts about DK's comments regarding time and space being joyful playthings. One realizes that time and space is the illusion to experience, the mind of God, universes, and expanding, fathomless thought that never ends. We being part of that thought, traveling space and time in experience.
Okay, you know what's happening here is that you all are really beginning to think abstractly, and that's good. And it requires then kind of a minute analysis of the various terms. There is something beyond thought. Thought is something that the trans-universal deity does. Thought is kind of a fixation on its own nature. The trans-universal or super-universal deity is beyond the measure of any universe. But if a universe is to be created, or become is a better word, if a universe is to be become, then this super-universal deity has to localize an aspect of absolute infinitude and fix it and bring it forth on what is called the ray of the absolute, bring it forth into objectivity as a finite universe. So it's true that the great entities have extremely powerful thoughts, and in a way everything we're experiencing here is a thought form of far greater entities than we are. A few things, you know, we have thought up, but the great kingdoms and of nature and the planets and the various constellations and the galaxies. They're really all thought forms at the root of it all. But beyond the possibility of thought lies that which nothing and no one thought up. It's not a thought, it's pure beingness. And it has no divisions in it, and there's no other entity to think it. So it is the one no thing that forever was not produced by thought. And you know, it cannot be really compared with anything. It's the root of all and is the incomparable and the immeasurable. And you know, when Blavatsky was writing, well, she was making commentary on what Master Kuthumi had translated for her in terms of the stanzas. Those early stanzas deal with this beingness than which there is no other and which is not the product of thought. So just to, you know, try to keep that clear, I would say. Everything in universe is the product of thought, and the universe itself is also that, but not that from which all things came. Thank you, Ishtar.
And Heike follows up with, the experience I mentioned above as event, probably not the right word, is more like being observer looking onto a bubble in which everything is at the same moment. But within the bubble, the experience changes and unfolds. Have to think more about words to use.
But I think what you just said is very useful. You know, I sometimes talk about abstraction, and another word that's used in philosophy is the word prescind. And you know, when you're up close and in it, there's a lot of movement, a lot of variety, and a lot of multiplicity. But the farther back you go, at least in the imagination, any field of activity starts to amalgamate and merge into one thing. And, you know, the changes that you would see up close are no longer seen. It comes out as only one thing. So if you prescind, if you abstract, if you pull back imaginatively, it's like a thought experiment. You pull back and multiplicity becomes oneness, which it really, really is. So finally, eventually, everything that you see, you knew there was multiplicity there, but it just looks like one thing, and it's all taking place at the same time. It's all superimposed. All variety is superimposed upon each other. And finally, it's taking place in no time at all. So we get into some mysteries and some enigmas here. And obviously it's called the vanishing point. You know what I mean? In art, in the perspectivized art of the Renaissance, they oftentimes did their paintings on the basis of a structure that was centered around a vanishing point. And that's a very interesting couple of words, because what we ultimately want to do is somehow prove that any entire universe is a dimensionless point, which is next to nothing or next to nothing, and we want that point to disappear into a super universal state. And finally, even super universality disappears into pointlessness, which is absoluteness, immeasurability. What are some of the words we've been using there? Sameness, non-divisibility. The point vanishes. And that is really the way to move beyond any universe. The universe disappears into its origin, and its origin is beyond any possible point. So this idea of kind of looking out at a bubble, you know, from a great distance is the way the very highest being would perceive all that apparently is happening. And everything that is happening turns out to be one thing. And it turns out that there will be no movement in it whatsoever. And eventually the point will completely disappear. And with that, any universe will completely disappear. So what you said about the distance and the bubble and all that, it triggered, you know, the idea of the ultimate observer and the vanishing of that which is observed. Thank you.
At this point, there are no hands raised and no other comments written in the chat box.
Well, maybe we better seize the opportunity, huh? Look, yeah.
Perhaps to let you know, I have put in the chat box the upcoming events for tomorrow and Sunday and their associated links. And also I've received some communication that the Vietnamese group will be doing in real time or actual time for us translations of those serious festival events.
Okay, so we'll have to be careful how rapidly we speak and so forth. Yeah, okay, that's good, Michael. And I'll tell you what, for everybody who wants to get into it, you know, maybe you should go to the chat box and make a copy of what is there. So you have what Michael has put in there. And
Joe has sent out a message through Constant Contact for all the festival events.
That of course, that's correct. And if you haven't received that from Joe, then here is at least something. But
And
you should have, yeah.
Yeah, I'll put out the calendar on Sunday for the upcoming week and include the rest of those events in that calendar.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I just want to say one thing. Your abstract mind is getting a workout, okay? That's what this is all about. We may think that we can think in the abstract mind, but maybe we can't really do that. Maybe we have to learn how to do that. And when you're considering some of these factors, it is an invitation to use the abstract mind, which is the beginning of being able to approach the intuition in the triad and eventually the nirvanic mind. And we can, you know, kind of, it's beyond the transcendental mind. The intuition is sometimes called transcendental mind, but nirvanic mind of the atmic plane is something greater still. And, you know, it's more the realm of the masters, but maybe we can pick up a little something from it and then thence to the monad. So this is whether we get things right or wrong, or whether we're totally accurate, is not the point. The point is to use the mind in a way different from how we had been using it when we deal with a lot more concrete things. And eventually, through our development of the Antakarana, we will be able to center our consciousness within the spiritual triad, as the masters can do, the maybe fourth degree initiates and especially the masters and beyond. So, that's kind of justifying here what we're trying to do. In a way, cosmic fire gets much more concrete than some of these footnotes that we've been dealing with. And we will, being very careful with words and what he's trying to convey, because he always says, words are getting in my way, he says, we will try to learn the lessons that he is trying to impart. So the next thing would be simply to end with the great invocation, which I say brings us right down to earth in a way. And I just want to, thank the communications team for being so diligent. And this is involving Michael and Joe, and BL is a member of that too at times. And of course, Tuya and I are working together in this way. And there are others too that are really helping us with Zoom. Michael Crow and Rodrigo and Bob Basil. And, these are just names to you maybe, but it's part of a great team that's really helping fulfill the Tibetan's prophecy that at a certain point the teaching would go forth over the radio, he said, from 1975 on. Well, we're part of that radio broadcast. So, great invocation. From
change your screen, please.
I tell you what, the voice of God always gets in there, doesn't it? Yeah, but it's like a contest. Can I escape and do it right? Well, there it is. Okay. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Oh. Oh. Okay, friends, thank you for being here. I think next meeting tomorrow morning, Soul of Nations, and then, as I say, Joe has sent out the list involving what the two and I are doing, and then how we're blending in with the 2025 initiative group. So until next Wednesday, we are having serious Leo related broadcasts and webinars, and it all should be on one document. And but in terms of the Ask program tomorrow morning, Soul of Nations, and on Sunday morning, looks like we have maybe it's canceled. I'm not sure.
The Attracting Resources for Hierarchical Purposes is canceled on Sunday morning to accommodate the work with the Leo Sirius Festival.
Right. Okay. We'll just use the word deferred or temporarily postponed. We'll keep coming back with that meditation. So thank you, and have a nice evening, morning, night, whatever it may be for you. And this will be available on Makara before long, and Joe and Harold Moses are putting a lot of these up onto YouTube. So that's another place where they will be able to be accessed. We'll see you then, and thank you for being here. Bye-bye.